Hello, 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 hello. Right, double checking all the settings and everything. Hello, folks. It looks like we are now successfully streaming live on Facebook. I'm Susan J. Mumford. I'm the founder of Be Smart About Art. I'm also an entrepreneur in the art world, art market. And I'm here today to talk, well, firstly, to tell you a story, and secondly, to talk about LinkedIn. Not necessarily, I was looking at our description of it across social channels, and it was saying about why you should use it. I mean, basically, I'll cover that in very brief detail, but importantly, what I will do is help you understand really how you can go about making the most of it. And the why is pretty straightforward. So I am just pulling up LinkedIn, or rather not LinkedIn, but Facebook on my end so that I can see myself as I go. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to see that board okay as well. So I'm going to slightly readjust this. I've just recently started to use the board, the whiteboard, in some of the sessions, which I think works really well. So I'm going to try it again today, and we'll just see what we think of that. What I'm going to start by doing in this approximately kind of half-hour show is I'm going to read to you from the Be Smart About Art book, Art is Your Life, Make It Your Living. And after that, I'll take out some nuggets from this. This was published a few years ago. This is based on a series of blog posts. And then after that, I am going to delve into LinkedIn as a platform for us to think about how you could use it. And be sure to comment, be sure to add your questions or any of your own experiences into the comments below for those of you who are watching live, but also if you're watching the replay, feel free to pop in something because we're very interested in sharing as a community, bearing in mind that our motto during this whole pandemic period is simple and supportive. So that's you keeping it simple. It is also being supportive of others as well as receiving support. And that means engaging with other human beings. And in this platform included, that is on a social media platform that enables engagement. So I'm keeping an eye on the comments as we go. First and foremost, the story. So this piece, here's a little picture. I think it'll probably appear backwards, but as it is, it doesn't really matter. It's called Do Your Research and Be Prepared for Others to Research You. The fish on the bone was perfect. Scott's, a famous seafood restaurant in Mount Street, that's Mayfair in London, was bustling. What a different era that was, thinking about it. Will I leave the restaurant with a new client? I wondered to myself. It was already a done deal, and I just didn't know that yet. I had met Eric several weeks prior, and he'd subsequently invited me to lunch. When calling to make the invitation, he mentioned that he and his wife were keen to bring in an art advisor, as I was, to look after their collection. On the day whilst sipping Chablis, I pondered, will they select me? Midway through the meal, Eric made a fascinating remark that really stood out to me, and so I researched it afterwards. I understand that fine dining is a particular love of yours. How did he come up with that? I sat there in amazement, and then click. I realized that he had studied my LinkedIn profile, and not only studied it a little bit, but quite carefully having to scroll down a fair bit to see that little point about fine dining being a like of mine. By the end of lunch, we'd confirmed next steps for the business agreement. Within a month, I was curating their collection and my team was busy installing it. And to give you a sense of time, the installation took place on the day of that's Prince William, and Kate's wedding. So that was a number of years ago now. So here's what had happened. Eric and I met at a social occasion and had a pleasant chat. We swapped emails and connected on LinkedIn. I remember the email invitation came in almost immediately after meeting, and I was quite impressed by that. And being from the art world, I wasn't necessarily used to seeing a lot of activity on LinkedIn. So to meet somebody and then to have a very swift connection request, which was all very formal, it was all very professional, with a little note attached, etc. Dear Susan, pleasure to meet, etc., etc. It stood out to me. Following that, he and his wife had looked at the website, that is my art advisory website, and the LinkedIn profile for myself, and decided that I was the right person for them. He invited me to lunch to discuss and formalize. In short, I'd arrived to be handed a consulting job on a silver fish platter in this case. Thank goodness I'd recently updated the LinkedIn profile. Had that not included adding expertise as an art advisor, as at the time I was in the process of building up that portfolio with new clients, I possibly wouldn't have secured the lunch invitation to Scott's, let alone the job. I mean, I remember this massive sense of relief that I had once this all happened, going, wow. And I had just quite randomly decided to update my profile to say exactly what I had been doing, but to actually make it public so that somebody else in the world, apart from my other half, actually had some ideas. Well, I suppose the artists also knew what was going on with all of our projects and sales, commissions, etc. The moral to this story equally applies to yourself, any professional. Someone you already know or meet for the first time might be looking for a specific type of service, that's bespoke commission or consultancy, for example, or a good, such as a work of art. Have you clearly described your up-to-date offering on your LinkedIn profile, as well as other social media platforms, not to forget your website? Have you received recommendations from existing clients or gallerists? Do you have visible activity and engagement? It's well worth a time investment, I say in the blog post, to keep your profile up to date on all social media platforms. As part of the exercise, be sure to get recommendations listed as applicable. And who knows, you too might end up dining at Scott's or your local equivalent with a new client. Now, at the time, what I would suggest is that might be a virtual lunch meeting that you might have, which people are doing. I mean, I was fascinated just yesterday to see that someone who I know who owns a local restaurant here in Lewis in East Sussex, who's a real go-getter, she was saying that she posted onto social media and she said, hey, really enjoying this lunch meeting with other chefs to work out our plans for what we're doing. And so she was having a lunch meeting. You could see this gorgeous plate full of food. I remember there being salad. I remember there being cabbage and leaves and various things, and actually thinking to myself, can I make that salad as well? But I did note, I thought how awesome that instead of meeting her fellow chefs face to face for meeting, she's meeting them online. So she's still continuing that conversation. And not only that, she is able to meet people regardless of geographical location. So feasibly, they could have even had some people in other time zones having different types of meals if it was a different type of day. So we can really take advantage of this time to be meeting with people, say collectors or potential colleagues or existing colleagues, to swap ideas, compare notes, and to see how we're doing things going forward. So I thought that was brilliant to see her doing that meeting, and to post about it was actually quite inspiring. Sip of tea there, drinking it casually here on social media. So the first question we have is about the why for LinkedIn. So I'm going to put into red letters why, and then for short, LI, and I'm hoping you'll be able to see that okay. I'm just looking at the screen myself to make certain that you can. So the why of LinkedIn. Now, the first thing that I always say to creative professionals is this. One, this shows that you are and I'm putting this into all caps, this word, it shows that you are a professional. And I say it like that because there's this idea in the art world that if you're in the art world, you don't need to be on LinkedIn. Now, it's true you don't need to be LinkedIn. Arguably, nobody needs to be on LinkedIn. I mean, there are different ways of going about that. When people say to me, oh, do you need to be on Instagram? Do you need to be on Twitter? Do you need to be on Facebook? Do you need to have a website? Do you need to be online? The answer is, well, no, there are multiple options. It's just that it's really excellent for showing that you're a professional. It's a really good way of indicating that you are taking your own career seriously. So that's why I make that a big song and a dance, that by listing yourself on there, you're taking yourself seriously, and therefore other people are likely to take yourself seriously because you're saying, here's me, this is me on this social network that is there existing as a professional network. Now, some of you might know that LinkedIn started as a social platform for recruitment. It still has a lot of that today. And so that's really hence the emphasis on this being professional. So the type of language that people use on LinkedIn tends to be more formal. If I think about one of the social media content plans for one of my businesses, my portfolio of enterprises in the art market, one of them you can actually see there's a spreadsheet, and it will have makes me think maybe this is a nice idea for a future thing that we do. That what you can do is in our spreadsheet you've got, in what order, it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and then LinkedIn. And the LinkedIn language is a bit more formal. We remove hashtags from being in the posts. We reduce the number of hashtags to 3, absolute maximum 5, but typically 3 or 4 hashtags. Whereas with Twitter, it's going to be choppy. You might be truncating words. With Instagram and Facebook, it's probably going to be more lively, more accessible, with some hashtags in the post. So this is a professional platform. Therefore, the way that you're presenting yourself might be, you're still maintaining your brand, but your brand can have slightly different tones depending on the audience. That's you just really adjusting based on the audience there. So that was the first thing. Now the second point is, I'm going to say, credibility. So what I mean by that is you are establishing credibility on LinkedIn. You are showing that you are reputable. You are showing that you're well regarded. You're showing that you're well experienced, that you're somebody who is trustworthy. And you're able to indicate that on your LinkedIn, on your profile. And there are various ways of going about that. And I'll give you just probably 3 tips today. We don't have time for an entire workshop, but what I can do in time is to give more information through the show. And also we're running a program of online workshops with Be Smart About Art starting on the 9th of June. In June, we'll be doing 2 workshops. And then for the rest of 2020, we'll be doing a monthly workshop. I think it's the last Tuesday of each month, apart from December, when it'll be slightly earlier in the month. And one thing we'll be diving into more is social media, and LinkedIn is always included in that. But I can cover more and more of LinkedIn throughout the shows on Facebook, which are freely available to anyone. So credibility. One of the things that I noted in that blog post was recommendations. Now, a quote unquote recommendation on LinkedIn is the same as a testimonial, which I'm sure you're familiar with that word. So it's the exact same thing. It's somebody else giving you an endorsement about what you do, about your services, the experience. There's a famous saying, I've mentioned it before, by Maya Angelou, about how, this is not verbatim, but it's along the lines of what people remember is how you made them feel. And so actually evoking emotion and feeling and the experience of working with you is something that's incredibly important when it comes to endorsements. If it's enjoyable to work with you, if it's a really fantastic experience, people are much more likely to engage. And thank you for those who are starting to engage as well in the live feed. So credibility is something that you can do, and the way that you can do LinkedIn is have different positions listed that can be for different services that you offer, for example, and then you associate recommendations with the different services that you offer. So if one thing you have is creating bespoke commissions depending on people's needs, then you could have somebody provide an endorsement or quote unquote recommendation specifically in association with you providing bespoke or custom commissions. Whereas you might have another experience, which is, say, the creation of paintings, watercolors, and sculptures. And then you might have other endorsements from collectors saying, wow, this artist is continually making new works of art, and they are just forever developing themselves creatively, and it's fabulous to be watching them, and they couldn't be a nicer person as well. That's a really nice kind of endorsement to get from a collector, for example, or it could be from a gallerist as well. And the thing about that is, again, we're talking about the feeling. People do like to buy from nice people. I do know that. I've been in the art world for about 20 years now, and I've been a dealer for many of those years. Not today. Today I support people in the art world. with their businesses, but I do know that there are certain motivations to people buying. They need to fall in love with the piece, having a great interaction with the buying experience. So whoever is selling the piece, whether it's the artist or the gallerist or the online platform, whatever it is, but also when somebody knows, when they get the sense of the artist being somebody they would love to support, and even if they would love to support, say, the gallery, if they're nice, the platform, because the platform is really brilliant, that really helps to seal the deal of art sales. And the brilliant thing about recommendations on LinkedIn is you can't post them yourself. I know you might be thinking, well, how is that great? Because that means I have to get somebody else to write it. You can send them some draft ideas and that kind of thing to help them along the way, particularly if they're really busy. You can even send people a request to submit a recommendation, but it shows that it's valid, that you haven't made it up, because somebody else who's also a user with a profile on LinkedIn has to have submitted it to your LinkedIn account, and then you have to accept it. And so what that means is that it's genuine. Whereas on a website, you might see all of these comments and you think, well, are they real? So LinkedIn is actually really excellent from that point of view. And why else for LinkedIn? We're going to go to point number 3 here, which is, I'm going to say, visibility plus discovery. Now this is where your heading, your description that you've got, your headline, really comes into play as well, the keywords that you might have in there. People will hopefully discover you, and particularly if you are keeping your profile up to date, that is one of the key things. Some people see it as maybe a living CV, curriculum vitae, or resume. But the other thing too is that you might have more activity in LinkedIn that helps you to be discoverable as well. And the thing that you can do is in your headline, this is kind of starting to move down to the next part of the session that I really want to cover, which is that instead of saying you're an artist or that you're a gallery director, you specify what kind of art do you do, what kind of projects do you do. And a Susan hack, at least the latest that I checked, is that on LinkedIn, if you update your headline, not on a laptop or a desktop using the browser, but if you actually sign in to LinkedIn using the app on a smartphone or tablet, I've done it on the smartphone, but I presume it will probably be the same thing on the tablet, is you actually get about double the amount of characters in your headline. So it's a sneaky little thing that is actually built into their platform. It's not doing anything wrong. It's just a bit of, it's out there available, and LinkedIn doesn't seem to have corrected it. So if you'd like more characters in your headline, that's the way to do it. The next thing I want to get to then is looking at the how. Now you might be noticing a little theme of the BSAA show, which is that we're often talking about things such as the why, the how. Only yesterday it's normally the Monday show, but it was the Tuesday show featuring the Monday topic of the art world this week. I was talking then about the why, the how much, the what, the who, all of that. These are continual themes because they're really important questions to always be asking, and they apply to so many facets of life in your work. So with the how, that's how do you go about being effective on LinkedIn? Let's say, presuming that you have got your profile. So the first tip here is up to date. That is, and that deserves a huge exclamation mark. Not letting that be out of date. And I think that the blog post that I read to you really does indicate that there was a stroke of luck that I had when I got that really lovely job with some nice people, and that's going the other way. If I were to endorse collectors, would I absolutely endorse her? Because she was, even though I went to lunch with him, she was the one. She has a corporate job, so she probably didn't have time for lunch. He was kind of semi-retired but still doing some professional work, so he would have had more time for that lunch. So I met with him. She was the collector. Would I say great things? Completely, I would, definitely. And so up to date, I mean, that was just a stroke of luck, and there's definitely an element to luck when it comes to success in your career. Bear in mind that with good luck does also come bad luck, but you get yourself out there and you have some luck. So keeping it up to date means that hopefully somebody might just so happen to stumble upon it right when you've added some updated stuff. Take a look. I suggest for that, in terms of an action point, is make yourself a regular calendar appointment. So if you use an electronic calendar, for example, what you can do is you can maybe set yourself, let's be realistic. I'm not somebody who is going to say, let's do this thing, and it's completely just never going to happen. Life happens, work happens, etc. Maybe once a quarter. How about that? So that would probably be realistic, that you could say maybe on the first Wednesday of every quarter that you checked in with yourself to see if it was still up to date, and you could add recent projects. I mean, ideally you might even update it more, but that means that you would at least be making a point, a conscious point, to be checking it and triggering yourself. Okay, so that's a good idea. And you just set your calendar so that it's you're getting a quarterly reminder, and it's quarterly appointment that's happening. You could even put some reminders in there ahead of the appointment with yourself, and you could always, of course, have that with your advisor as well if you have an advisor. All right, so then we've got up to date. I've mentioned the headline already. So headline, description, and I'm going to say, remember Susan hack. So that is just brilliant, and it works a treat. And just get your keywords in there. The thing, and the reason for that is that when people are using LinkedIn like a search engine, and it's a very powerful site, could even help you on other search engines such as Firefox or Safari or Chrome, what have you, that when somebody types in, say, a very specific search term, that's something that they're wanting, that then they're much more likely to come across you. And then there are other variables at play, such as what your location is versus the results that you get. So if somebody is looking for, let's say, a landscape sculptor specializing in, I don't know, let's just think about deer, then, and you type that in, they would be more likely, from what I know with the algorithm, to discover people who are close to where they were. But you can always do search terms beyond that, so you can even put locations in your headline if you think that's applicable, of course. And then remember your values in there too. So if there are values that you've got that you think you'd really like to include, such as, if I think about myself and what I've done in my life, which is often about equality, so maybe gender equality or fairness for people. My driving force in life is fairness. And another example would be, say, environmental sustainability. If I were pursuing art as a career and I wanted to attract people who are also interested in those same causes, I might actually include something about that I thought would be searched in LinkedIn. So useful to think about that. And then we have got I'm going to say, make the most of multiple pieces of experience currently applicable, is what I'm adding. So what I mean by that is that essentially, just what a lot of people will do is they'll say, I'm an artist or I'm a gallery director, and they'll have loads and loads of like a huge description underneath that. And essentially what they could be doing instead is having the different, I touched upon this earlier, but just to draw out a bit more detail for you here, is saying, okay, let's actually list the fact that I offer this service as one job description. Let's offer, which I've explained as an experience here. Then the fact that I do this other service is listed as a separate piece. And it only takes a little bit of time investment to do this. And once you've got it set up, it's just brilliant, because somebody can literally just scroll past your or scroll through your profile really quickly and see, bam, that person does that, does that, does that, does that, does that. And if I remember correctly, what you do is, I think it's that you say that it's in the name. Is it in the name of the business, or is it in the description of each one? It's one or the other, is where you, I think it's slightly flipping it, but it's where you put that description at the top of each bit of experience. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, I did say I would have 3 or 4 points for you here. I'm actually going to do 2 more quick ones. The fourth one is going to be recommendations. So what that is I mean by that is requesting recommendations, as I had mentioned above. And 5 is going to be post news in your feed. And this is really an update. And I'm going to say use hashtags. This is really an update to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn back in the day, people really did see it as an online CV. But actually today, people are making really excellent use of putting news in the feed and people react to it. And I suppose as a cheeky extra is that you can always add blog posts too. So that's more for content that you want people to continue to discover. But I think the big one there that continues to stay listed now as recent updates is what it's called. So if I go to your profile and you have recently shared pieces of news, under recent updates, it's going to have results from you posting into your newsfeed. So that's something that is really effective for LinkedIn. So basically, people are using the newsfeed in LinkedIn in much the same way that they're using the news feed in Facebook, in Instagram, in Twitter, and other social platforms. And that's something that we just didn't see or use as much in the earlier days of LinkedIn. And if you know, I have not actually mentioned any kind of LinkedIn groups. And it's because in the art world, that's probably the one thing I haven't seen working so well is the use of LinkedIn groups in the art world. People just, they're not actually active enough in LinkedIn, but it's a great place to access the people who you want to work with, who you want to sell to, because bearing in mind, even if you think, hey, my best mates in the art world don't use LinkedIn tons, think about who you're selling to. Think about those people who you're wanting to reach. Many of those people are going to be on LinkedIn, and it's used increasingly. And actually being in the art world, we have a real opportunity to have a strong advantage in LinkedIn, in the sense that if there isn't as much, say, competition for visibility because not everybody is on there, well, actually, you've got a greater opportunity to stand out. And I do know artists and galleries who have directly profited from their activities on LinkedIn. And my own story that was in the book, by the way, Art is Your Life, Make It Your Living. If you go to patreon.com/be smart about art, it is on there. Look in the shop, the shop tag that we've got, and we'll soon have that on the website as well. So you can see that in that blog post I read, that I successfully secured a really amazing piece of work. And that was a direct result of having seen, not only having met somebody face to face, which you could still do online now, but they then researched me on LinkedIn, decided that I was credible, qualified. They were really happy with that. And we had gotten on in terms of personalities. And so I got the job. And why not do that? Why not invest several hours to get your profile up to date, to do what we've been talking about, and then just basic maintenance, jump in there a couple of times a week, do some posts, interact with other people. Interacting is really important for visibility across social media platforms. Well, everyone, that brings us to a close to today's BSAA show. That was a real pleasure to talk about LinkedIn based on a blog post that I'd written many, many moons ago. I think storytelling is a really important activity and way of engaging with our fellow humans, and to remembering things as well. And thus, part of the reason that I was really keen to read stories is that I know that it will help you to retain a lot of what I'm talking you through in these shows. So I look forward to seeing you this time next week for the Be Smart About Art storytelling episode. And as ever, next week, Monday will be covering the art world this week. Tuesday will be covering Be Smart About Art question time. Wednesday, we'll have the storytelling session. And if you haven't yet looked, or you haven't looked recently, check out the Be Smart About Art members community at patreon.com/Be Smart About Art. There is an increasing, consistent amount of activity taking place there. It is, it's a fabulous community with some really strong values that underpin that network. And what we say is participate, connect, grow, so that you're participating in networks, connecting with others, and then growing as a result, personally and professionally. And for those of you who might be watching who think, gosh, you can't actually invest right now in the membership network, keep taking advantage of the Be Smart About Art show and follow us across social platforms at Be Smart About Art. We're really happy to be here supporting people during this changing time. There are many hardships. There are silver linings as well, and I'm seeing some incredible things taking place as a result. Know that there's professional communities here supporting the work of creative professionals, which is incredibly important. Creativity is paramount to abstract thinking and basically, I would say, surviving and thriving in this crazy old world and finding the beauty therein. I look forward to seeing you next time, and I'm wishing everyone well, including a happy birthday to one of our viewers. I'd forgot about that, so happy birthday. And everyone, wishing you well. See you next time. Ciao for now. Signing out from Lewis in East Sussex.